Welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. I'm Miff Galloway, a performance coach passionate about supporting ambitious and high-performing women just like you who know they have untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed. If you're looking to massively up-level your performance in all areas of life, you've come to the right place. My goal on this podcast is to take you beneath the surface so you can connect with yourself on a deeper level while providing you with valuable insights and the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges and go after your goals with strength, clarity, and wisdom. If you're ready to uncover the truth which lies underneath so you can recognize your powerful feminine leadership style, pursue your goals unapologetically, and thrive in every aspect of your life, hit the follow button and get ready to explore the incredible possibilities that lie within you. Together, we'll uncover your next steps in achieving peak performance, because actually, you can. Welcome to another episode of Actually, You Can. Today, we're talking about something that could transform the way you lead, not just in business, but in life, and that is spiritual intelligence. My guest today is Dr. Yosi Amram, who is a pioneering researcher in this field, an executive coach to top CEOs, and a clinical psychologist. His journey from serving in the Israeli Air Force to leading companies through IPOs to experiencing a spiritual awakening has shaped his mission, which is to help leaders tap into their true source of power and purpose. So if you've ever felt disconnected from your work, uncertain in your leadership, or curious about how to lead with more heart, then you're going to want to stick around for this. So welcome to the show, Yosi. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Miff. Delighted and honored to be here. And I'm enjoying your enthusiastic and sweet smile right now. So it's together. That's even better.
I'm so pumped about this. I remember locking your interview in and I'm like, spiritual intelligence, this is right up my alley. I have no idea what to expect, but I'm so keen to learn more. So with that aside, I would love to first learn more about what is spiritual intelligence and how does it differ from something that might be more commonly known in terms of emotional intelligence? How do you distinguish between the two?
Great. Well, that's a great place to start. I'll just say that you exhibited a little bit of a quality of spiritual intelligence, which is openness and curiosity right here. As you were like, oh, I don't know, and I want to learn more. So that's that's one of the spiritual intelligence qualities. But what
Great.
is it, and how is it different from emotional intelligence? So let's start with emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information to help manage our own and others' emotions. Usually, it's technically defined as the ability to be aware and regulate emotions and self and others. But the focus is emotional resources and information. So, by analogy, spiritual intelligence is the ability to draw on spiritual resources and qualities and embody them in daily life to enhance functioning and well-being. So you say, well, what are these spiritual qualities and resources? So these are the qualities and virtues that have been hailed by all the world's spiritual traditions for thousands of years, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, shamanism, Taoism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, regardless of their cosmology and theology, whether someone believes that Muhammad was the final prophet or Jesus was the Messiah or Moses transcribed the Torah on Mount Sinai or the Buddha was enlightened, whatever the cosmology and theology, all these traditions share these common values and resources and principles, which are purpose, service, trust, gratitude, humility, integrity, presence, etc. So, these qualities emerged, and there are 22 of them that emerged as universal in my research, my doctoral research, where I interviewed 71 teachers across all these world's traditions. And I had made sure that I had at least 4 teachers in each of these major traditions, and in many cases more. And these were people that were nominated by their peers as people that walked the talk. Namely, they embodied what they were talking about. And what I asked them is how these qualities showed up, or what qualities and how their spirituality got embodied and lived in daily life. So, to make a few clear distinctions, spiritual intelligence is not a spiritual belief. So you can believe in God or not believe in God, and higher power, reincarnation of the soul, angels, whatever someone may have in their spiritual belief system. Or you can have a spiritual experience, a momentary, even awakening, a dissolution of your ego. You might be meditating and you feel oneness, or you're walking in the forest and you feel oneness with nature. That would be perhaps a spiritual experience. But that's again, that might inform and support your spiritual intelligence, and it's an important foundational piece that might help that. But really, spiritual intelligence then, how do you take that momentary awakening or belief in higher power or whatever, and then how do you live your life? Do you live your life with gratitude? Do you live your life with joy, with purpose, with service orientation, with egolessness? So we can have a belief, we can have a momentary awakening, but then we get on the freeway and we're in this box of metal cars, and we might believe we're all one, but now there's somebody cutting me off, or I'm trying to get to work on time, or I'm in the supermarket and someone in front of me is really slow. And so it's like, in my team environment at work, am I trying to be right, prove myself right, or am I trying to do the right thing? So am I creating a political toxic environment because of my ego and narcissism, and it's about me and my advancement? Or am I really focused on a sense of purpose and a mission, and creating a community of shared intention and purpose and vision and mission? So that's kind of like spiritual intelligence versus spiritual experience versus spiritual belief, and then how it relates and is different from emotional intelligence. I'll pause here. I could say a lot more about it, but how the two relate, compare and contrast. And so we can
Yeah,
dive in if you want to unpack it more, but I do want to pause here.
yeah. So I'd love to make sure I am understanding correctly. So it sounds like spiritual intelligence, you've identified 22 sort of qualities, or I guess values. Would that be a better word to describe it? Like values that these people are more importantly embodying. It's not something that's just a fleeting moment. It's these qualities or values that they're living by consistently.
Yeah, that would be, it could be values, it could be resources, it could
Yeah.
be qualities. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Awesome.
So, some of these would be a value like forgiveness or compassion, or egolessness, or, but, sometimes like it would be a quality like trust, and trust in life, trust in life, trust in the universe, trust in myself, trust. So it's not just, you know, it's not, you know, naive trust in other people. So, but,
Yeah.
it's a discernment. So
Yeah.
it's a reason, for example, discernment, the ability to discern the truth would be a capacity, uh, and so anyway, so that's why I say it could be a resource, it could be a quality, it could be uh, a value. Yes.
And an example that's coming to mind when you share that is I'll often say in any situation, all good. I'll be all good. I have like this is trust that things are going to work out. I don't actually know things are going to work out, but I have this sort of inner knowing that things are going to work out. Would that be aligned to spiritual intelligence?
Yeah, that would be trust. That
Yeah.
would
Okay.
be a quality of trust, and that's an
Yeah.
important quality, because when you have that fundamental, you can call it trust or faith or whatever you want, or optimism or confidence in yourself and in life, that gives you resilience. And then you go through a difficult time in your life or a challenging situation, because you have this trust that things will work out, it makes you persistent. And then as you are persistent and you keep working it, instead of going into despair and hopelessness and giving up, things will more likely work out. And then as you persist and express resilience, and things work out, it reinforces and deepens your trust. So trust, for example, is not a once and done type of thing. It's a quality that we practice and deepens over time. So we might have the idea that, yeah, trust, but how do we change our biology and our neural pathways so that trust is embodied in our nervous system as we go through things? And so in Hebrew, I come from Israel. You mentioned I was in the Israeli military. So, for example, the word for trust is emunah. It's also sometimes translated as faith, but emunah is trust. And then a related word with the same root is emun, which is practice. And another word with the same root is oman, which is an artist. So trust is an art form that we practice. And the more we practice trust, the more it deepens and develops. It's not a once and done. Oh, I choose to trust in God. Okay. Some people may say, I take a leap of faith. I'm going to trust in God. But we can say that to ourselves, and then the next week a crisis happens, and we're like, I don't know, God, why did you do this to me? And so, but if we practice trust, we say, well, I don't know what's good about this, and this is really terrible, and it's really painful, and we don't deny that. It's not a spiritual bypassing, but there is that deep trust that things will work out despite it. And that gives us the resources and the resilience to go through it. And then 6 months later, a year later, we might have been laid off from a job and it was terrible. We couldn't meet our mortgage payments, etc. But then we found a better job that's more aligned with our purpose. And then we say, wow, and then next time we have a difficult situation, we end a relationship and we think, oh my God, how am I going to be now? I'm lonely. Now. It's really terrible. But we remember, okay, I was laid off from this job and things worked out for the best. And then it was like, okay, well, yeah, I grieve this ending of a relationship. It's really painful. I love this person. I'm now lonely. But maybe life is inviting me to move to another level of relationship. And maybe I'm going to meet someone more aligned. And that helps me go through it. And so it's as we practice it, it deepens and it helps us.
I can definitely resonate with the practice of it because my husband, in when there's challenging situations, my default is to say, "I'll be all good," and he's like, "It's not good. Like this situation is not good." And I'm saying, I said, I had to clarify to him, like, I'm not saying that the situation is good. What I'm saying is, I trust in my ability to get through this situation, and so that word trust is there. I didn't actually realize that until you articulated it out loud. It's in all those moments I'm backing myself and practicing that trust in myself to get through this situation that I'm calling all good. Because you mentioned another word there that I'm interested to dig into is the spiritual bypassing. Social media, I hear a lot of manifestation gurus and spirituality teachers talking about spiritual bypassing. I'd love to hear from the source. What is spiritual bypassing?
Well,
What are some
I'm not the
misconceptions about
source, so
it?
thanks.
A more
Yeah,
reputable source of truth.
okay, I don't know about that, but spiritual bypassing, I believe, was a term coined by John Wellwood, who was a teacher and a psychologist. But the bypassing is like this may sound something quote unquote tragic happens. Let's say we lose a loved one. It could be a pet, it could be a family member. We're not going to say, oh, it's all good. I mean, part of the love is allowing ourselves to feel the fear and allowing ourselves to feel the grief of the loss. So we can, but it's actually the trust that enables us to feel the grief and not think that, oh, I'm going to sink into clinical depression and I'm going to get swallowed up and never come out of it. Or there might be a situation that is scary. And so some people say, well, if you have faith or you have trust, there's no fear. I don't subscribe to that. Fear is an important emotion that we have, nature or God or whatever you want to say, gave to us. And it helps us sometimes uh, be cautious or flee a situation. I mean, you're walking someday. Your daughter, your child will be more than 6 months old. And you'll be walking down the street, and your child will be chasing a ball into the street, and there's a car coming or a truck, and a fear is going to come up, and a quick circuit in your brain is gonna activate you to lift her and pull her out of harm's way. So that fear is a healthy response. But another time, you know, God forbid, a child jumps into the railroad track and there's a train coming. So there's fear. But what's called for in that moment is courage. So courage is not the absence of fear. I jump in to rescue my child despite the fear. So a bypass would be able to say, "Well, I trust in God, I trust in life. I'm not afraid. So whatever needs to happen will happen." No, I need to pull my child out of harm's way, and so spiritual bypassing is like not not acknowledging the reality of the moment of what's happening, whether it's sad or fear, or it could even be in anger. I mean, I could talk about the usefulness of feeling our anger, not acting it out in a violent way. But bypassing would be denying the reality of it and saying, well, it's all good, and not acknowledging that we're afraid or sad or grieving or angry.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned. The quote that comes to mind is like, but feel the fear and do it anyway. So, like when you mentioned the fear triggered courage, like you need to feel the fear, but and despite the fear, be courageous. It's not saying you need to skip the fear, because the fear is what enabled you to step into courage as well.
Right. And we need not be afraid of fear.
100%. And so when we talk about, actually, no, before we go there, I'd love, you touched on anger, and anger is something that really interests me. So let's go to anger. What is some ways that anger shows up in with spiritual intelligence, or how do people, yeah, work with anger in that sense?
Well, so all of this is predicated on two other qualities that we already talked about. One was openness, and the other one is trust. So when we have openness and trust, we are open to the flow of life, and we trust that everything fits into a bigger picture and has some kind of role to play. And so you say, well, what is the function of anger? Anger alerts us when something that is precious that we love is in danger. Like Mama Bear gets angry when a
So
danger comes.
angry all the time.
So anger tells us that something, that our boundaries are being crossed, something that we love or treasure is being threatened, and that energy of anger gives us strength to deal with it, but deal with it skillfully. And when we deny our anger, people then explode and act it out. So I'm not saying act out your anger, by sometimes we're in partnership with our husband, spouse, wife, whatever our gender is. But I just say with our partner, and we get angry, and the question is how to healthy way express that we're upset or whatever, but not curse them, and not start yelling and screaming, and not throwing a shoe at them or whatever it is that some people do, that is an unhealthy expression of anger. But to be aware of the anger and bring awareness to it. And then part of the intimacy is to say, hey, when you keep doing this, I'm upset, I'm angry at you because you don't seem to be listening to me. And do that in a tone of voice that's authentic, but not calling the person names and insulting them, which is means we're dysregulated, and then we regret it. We do things that we later regret. So anger in and of itself, again, is not bad. It gives us information. The question is how we're aware of it, and that we stay centered and anchored. This brings up another quality of spiritual intelligence called equanimity. And this is also a segue to differentiate spiritual intelligence to emotional intelligence, for example, that you asked about. So, with emotional intelligence, we talk about self regulation and self awareness. So, anger might be a good example where both are come into play. With emotional intelligence, you want to be aware of your anger, and with self regulation, you're not going to act it out and do these terrible things of throwing shoes and cursing, right? So that would be emotional regulation, and that would be emotional intelligence. Now, with spiritual intelligence, you're also going to be aware of your anger. You're going to be open to it, to feel it in your body and in your life force. And you're also not going to act it out in a destructive way. But you have a deeper capacity of equanimity. And how is equanimity different than emotional self regulation? Equanimity says, with, with self regulation, I may be thrown off. I just can control my action, and I'm not cursing and throwing the shoe, so to speak. With equanimity, I feel my anger, but the anger is at the surface of my being and the surface of my experience. And I am like rooted deeper in the ocean. So if you look at the ocean, might be a lot of turbulence at the top, but there's kind of quiet flow, power, and peace in the bottom. So with equanimity, we can allow our anger, and be rooted in something much deeper in ourselves that gives us this inner peace. And the anger comes and goes, and it flows through us, and it's just part of life. It doesn't hook us. So, so at some level, the two are correlated. Emotional intelligence gives you the awareness of the anger and the capacity not to act it out in destructive way. With spiritual intelligence, you have awareness of the anger, but you also have knowledge, deeper self-knowledge. So spiritual intelligence, one of the things has to do with know thyself, which is a dictum that has been used in all kinds of traditions for thousands of years. Know who you are, know your essence, your true nature, beyond your personality, beyond your body, beyond your ego. So know thyself means know your emotions, but also know your essence, know your true nature, know your soul. And so it goes deeper than just your emotions, and then it gets you to these deeper layers of equanimity and inner peace. But in scientific studies, for example, in my research, emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence show some small to moderate correlation, because both of them are giving you some of those basic capacities, but they are complementary and can reinforce each other. So if I'm going to get a little nerdy with you, in my research on leadership, emotional intelligence explained 41% of the leader's effectiveness. Spiritual intelligence explained 46% of the leader's effectiveness. Combined, they explained 67%. So, what does that tell you? Is that they each were important and valuable on their own, and that spiritual intelligence has a somewhat bigger effect on its own, but that the two of them are greater than either one of them on their own. So that's just kind of the scientific, statistical, uh, backing to what I was saying, that they're somewhat correlated, but they're different and complementary.
And I would love to dig more into that research, specifically around spiritual intelligence and leadership. And before we get there, I want to make sure that I understand what you've shared previously, because a few things came to mind. Was firstly, there are no good or bad emotions. I think like all emotions are meant to be felt. So as you've highlighted before, there's some really great examples of how useful emotions are to get us to do things. They put us into motion in various different aspects. And the other thing that I liked how you distinguish between emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence was emotions are, I'm going to put my own words on it now, but like sort of surface level in terms of they're quite fleeting. So I liken it to when someone goes, "Oh, are you happy?" I'm like, I experience happiness, but it's not a permanent fixture of part of myself. I ground myself in those deeper qualities or values, like what you've mentioned. I think I will say I experience anger. I'm not an angry person. I experience sadness, but we all experience those emotions, and they're all fleeting. Like none of them last forever at the same intensity. And that's sort of, I guess, the beauty of being human is you will experience all of these emotions. Well, you have the ability to experience all these emotions to various degrees. I also believe that, you know, you need to experience the depths of what we call quote unquote negative emotions to be able to really truly experience the positive, I guess, quote unquote positive emotions of joy and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think the fact that the emotions are more surface level, temporary, and then where spiritual intelligence comes in is more deep rooted in the stuff that you ground yourself in. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a good way of
Nailed it.
articulating it. You ground, you root yourself in your essence, and you can say your ground of being, your spirit, your soul, whatever language. If you're Buddhist, you will talk about your true nature, or you might ground yourself in Dharmakaya or emptiness, whatever. I mean, again, as I said, there could be different theologies and different languages and different cosmologies, but yeah, so all emotions have a message, have a gift. When we go through grief, for example, it's inviting us to let go of something, and when we let go of that, that opens the door for something new. So every end is a beginning, every beginning is an end. So if we don't allow ourselves to grieve, we are holding on to something that's no longer here, and that leaves us closed down to the flow of life. So yeah, I
Love
think and actually you can, right? Is the name of your podcast. So actually you could feel your fear and not be swallowed up by it. You could feel your sadness and not just become a sad person. It doesn't need to define you. You could feel your anger and it will move through you. You're bigger than any of those. It's like, okay, I mean, the analogy some people give is like the sky. The sky is open and it can hold any weather system. Some days, you have clouds and rain, etc., but the clouds and the rain move through and the sky is unaffected, right? I
it.
mean, who and what you are is more enduring than the weather systems, the emotional patterns that move through. And yeah.
I love that. I love that. And so looking at your research on spiritual intelligence for leaders, I mean, I work in a corporate role and I love personality tests and all that sort of type testing you can do. I've never heard any sort of test or any corporate environment I've ever been in mention the importance of spiritual intelligence in the workplace. Emotional intelligence, hear that pretty much everywhere you turn. But considering how important spiritual intelligence is, and the fact that I've never heard about it before in a corporate environment, it's kind of like alarm bells, but just like in terms of an opportunity there. What would you say is is the role that spiritual intelligence plays in leadership, and why potentially haven't we been talking about it as much? Like, is it just something people don't know about as much? I don't know. Keen to hear more.
Yeah, well, with your help, in 10 years, everybody will be talking about it. That's what we're trying to do. So, but yeah, emotional intelligence, everybody talks about it. But if we can rewind a little bit, the concept of emotional intelligence first came into the fore in 1990 by two academicians, Salovey and Myers. They wrote an academic paper called Emotional Intelligence. Up until then, the zeitgeist, most people thought there's a dichotomy between emotion and reason. You're either emotional or you're kind of reasonable. So if I asked you, oh, do you know people in your life that are emotional? And you might have some idea. And usually that's not necessarily a compliment. Oftentimes it's someone who gets easily dysregulated and upset. Maybe they cry at a puppy commercial, whatever it is, right? And but then they said, oh no, there is emotional intelligence, which bridged the gap between emotion and reason, and emotional reason intelligence, like bringing those two concepts together, and there's no dichotomy between emotion and reason inherently. And so that was but that was in 1990, and then that concept got picked up by Daniel Goleman, and he wrote a book in 1995 and he popularized it. He wrote a beautiful book. And then since over that time period, there's lots of research and models and measures of emotional intelligence. So there was a scientific growing body of research that linked emotional intelligence, and they found that people that have higher emotional intelligence were more effective leaders. They ended up being more successful in their careers. They had better relationships. They were more empathic, all these things. But all of that came out of the ability to define it and then measure it. Because without measuring it, you can't study it scientifically. And without some scientific backing, we live in an age where science is kind of our go-to thing, and we believe in science, and that's a good thing. So we have a similar dichotomy, like I said, in emotional intelligence, a dichotomy in emotion and reason. In the world of spirituality, and especially in the corporate world, there's been a dichotomy, or in the culture at large, a dichotomy between spirituality and practicality. If you're spiritual, you're like, you're up in the heavens and you're communicating with angels, or I don't know, you have your mala and you whatever it is that you believe in, reincarnation of the soul. But you're in business, like, okay, show me the results, show me the productivity, show me the money, right? And we need to be practical here. We have a job to do. We have customers, we have shareholders, we have employees. So there's been this dichotomy. Now, I'll take some credit here, but so that's why I said, okay, I like this spirituality. I heard of this thing called spiritual intelligence. And so it's not my word. That concept was first coined by a woman called Dana Zohar. But she did not offer an operational definition or a measurement method. And I had the hypothesis that spiritual intelligence would be parallel to emotional intelligence and explain leadership. So I wanted to study and show that scientifically, but there was no method measurement. So that was what I set out to do. And so I mentioned all my 71 interviews. That was the first thing, to identify these themes and the qualities. But then I had to develop the first measurement of spiritual intelligence. And I developed with a co-researcher the first academically validated measure. And then with that, I could study leaders. So I did a study with 42 CEOs and 210 members of the staff to see whether spiritual intelligence helped explain who was a better leader, more effective leaders in terms of generating greater commitment, lower turnover, higher morale in their team. But to meet the standards of good research, I had to control for emotional intelligence to show that it's adding something above and beyond. So that's why my study included emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and personality, because there's also a body of research that says that certain personality types are more effective leaders, like conscientiousness and extroversion and openness, etc. So I had to isolate all the variables to show that spiritual intelligence indeed contributes to leadership effectiveness. That I cited some of the nerdy statistics from my doctoral research. But since I developed this first validated measure of spiritual intelligence, it has been translated into several languages, at least half dozen languages, and used by other researchers across a range of cultural and language contexts, all over the world, and both in leadership studies and non-leadership studies. And they have shown that spiritual intelligence contributes to satisfaction with life, quality of life, mental health, resilience, uh, individual productivity, group productivity. And to go back to the business thing, one study looked at the leaders' assessment of their spiritual intelligence and the financial outcomes of their business units. And they found that leaders that scored higher on spiritual intelligence in their self assessment produced better financial results for their business units. That was not found to be true for emotional intelligence. Again, I'm not trying to knock down emotional intelligence, but just to highlight that spiritual intelligence pays off to the business bottom line. Another study was done with banks, and banks that the average employee had higher level of spiritual intelligence produced better ROI on their assets, better return on. So this is practical. This isn't just woo woo, esoteric stuff.
I love those examples. And I'd love to hear in your, maybe it was your research when you were doing, when you had the leaders do your assessments, was there a particular area of spiritual intelligence that many leaders struggled with holistically, like generally? Or was it pretty, everyone was quite unique in that sense? Was there any, area that people typically struggled with?
Well, I think we all struggle with egolessness. And there's some research that correlates leadership with a certain level of narcissism, and but there's also healthy narcissism, and in psychoanalytic literature and theory, there's a level of narcissism that's considered healthy, and then it can be negative, but narcissism in the sense of some level of self-confidence. But it's a fine line between, like, you have to have enough belief in yourself to take on tasks that others may not feel are doable or whatever. So that, yeah, but then at some level it becomes like I am special, and then it becomes an ego identity. And yeah, so how to balance that confidence in oneself, but have a sense of humility, and be egoless. And normally we think that you can't have it both ways, but I think a deeper understanding of these things, you could be confident and be humble, and it's just not about you. And so if you're devoted to your mission, to your purpose, to your vision, then it's not about self-aggrandizement. It's not about proving yourself. It's about you know, uh, putting all your energy, all your life force, and bringing everybody together behind this idea, this vision, this purpose. And when you come from that inspired place yourself and you're devoted to that, that actually inspires other people to come and support and align around that. Nobody wants to work for someone who's just an egomaniac and it's all about them, that doesn't let other people express their creativity, their contribution, that brings people together with a sense of community. When people are aligned together, and that energy then is multiplicative as opposed to divided, where people
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Yeah. I like what you mentioned around the differentiated between confidence and humility, because I like to think that confidence is a bad thing. Like it's not a bad thing, because in particular environments I want my leader to be confident. Like if we're facing a really big challenge at work, I want them to be like, yeah, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do. But then I also equally want my leader to be open to learning new things and to be like, hey, I might not know the answers in this situation. So I can definitely see how that plays out as well. It's almost like you need to learn to be able to flex up and down the spectrum of whatever the quality is.
Well, you need both, like you're saying. You need this thing of actually we can. That's the
Yeah,
confidence.
we can.
Because if we don't believe that what we're undertaking is possible, that's going to be discouraging, and we're not going to put our best. I mean, nobody wants to go after and feel the futility of what they're doing. So that's the confidence part, which relates to the trust part, that we trust in ourselves, and that engenders hope and optimism about the future, that mobilizes our energy and gives us the encouragement to go apply ourselves fully, because we believe that in the efficacy of what we're doing and then the possibilities. So that's the confidence part. The actually you can, actually we can. And then, but the other side is, like you said, the humility, the openness. To learn, and that it's not I know it all, and to listen to the customers, to listen to the market, to listen to the other departments, and then without that, and that's the only way you get real collaboration and real intimacy. So the task in any relationship is I need to stand my ground, my truth, and I need to be confident enough to express it, but not rigid such that I'm not open to change it. But if I don't say my truth, then I don't make my contribution. I'm not helping you. And any connection we might think we have is not real, because you don't really are not hearing what the truth of what I'm saying. So real contact, real connection requires both people to be authentic and have the courage to speak their truth, even if it's different, even if it's not what the other person wants to hear. So I need to have the confidence, I need to have the authenticity to be myself, to be confident and comfortable in being in my own skin, who and what I am. And at the same time, I need to be open to you. And here, you might have a very different view. And together, through the collaboration, we'll have a synthesis of these two points of view that would elevate us to something richer, better, higher. And you see that in organizations all the time. I mean, engineering might be advocating for quality product and innovation, and might be require slowing down, and sales or marketing would be like, oh, we got to move quickly and respond to this customer, and there's a time window, etc. And if you are just, let's say, the CEO, and you got these two departments advocating two things, you don't want to just make one right and the other wrong. I think the best companies like find a synthesis of where you are both focused on quality and innovation, but you're also responsive and timely in your product cycles. Um, and but that happen, I'm talking about it in a corporate level, but that happens within our psyche, like we talked about confidence and humility, the yin and yang. You can think about it, the yin and yang. It can be in a relationship, whatever relationship is.
I think you provided such an incredible. I feel like I have a clear picture of what spiritual intelligence looks like now, especially in the workplace where I think it can be super valuable. And so I'd love to hear, for the leaders listening to this podcast, what's a really actionable step that they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start to what could be like a daily practice or exercise that they can do to help develop their spiritual intelligence.
Well, I'll focus on two qualities. I'll mention two qualities of spiritual intelligence. One is gratitude, and the other one would be purpose. So, gratitude, one is we know it really affects our mood. And if we practice gratitude, the attitude of gratitude, we're happy, we're more positive, we come to work with more lightheartedness and energy and positivity, which we emanate. And then, if we could share that gratitude through the practice of appreciation, that reinforces people, and then they're motivated, their motivation increases, and they do well. So, one practice starting tomorrow is like, when you go through your day, make a habit to say, okay, I am going to pay attention to small or big things that I could be grateful for. It could be an idea that someone expresses in a meeting, or a teammate that produced a beautiful report or presentation or a spreadsheet or whatever it is, or a friend that, or a colleague at work that stayed an hour late and to work with you on something. And then when you go to sleep at night, you recount the three, four, five things during the day that you feel grateful for. And that makes you go to sleep with a better mood. And then appreciate those people if you can in real time. That's like Pavlovian conditioning, and the sooner the feedback is given, the better. But if you didn't have the wherewithal to do it in the moment, and at the end of the day, you remember, oh, this was really good, a really great meeting. I appreciated how everybody was open, how we collaborated. I'm grateful for that. Then the next day you look to them and you say that to them, or you send them an email at a minimum. So that would be a practice of gratitude and appreciation, and it will transform your mood and the energy of the people you're working with. So that would be one. The second thing I would say is purpose. And purpose has to do with finding our unique gifts and using them to contribute to life, to others, to the greater whole. And now the trick in spiritual intelligence and leadership is to find an alignment between one's personal purpose and the organizational purpose. So let me give a few examples. So let's assume you're working in an airline and you are the head of the team of mechanics that is in charge of maintaining the airplanes and testing them, etc. Now your purpose and your craft and your talents is working with your hands and workmanship. That's kind of you love to do that, and that's how, and then but if you apply that skill set to your job and your team, then you're supporting the mission of the airline, which is to have safe travel and things that leave on time. So if you can find alignment between your calling, your purpose, your skills, your talents, and that this is my purpose in life, and then how that lines up with my organizational mission or the overall bigger mission, then there's an inner alignment and there's fulfillment. But you could take someone else in the finance department and their skill and talent is in numbers, and what they love is to empower people with analysis and information, and this is kind of like how they feel they make a contribution, and they do that in the context of the airline to help them, from a totally other angle, to empower management with the right information so they can make the right decisions of which routes they should follow, they increase their prices, reduce their prices, whatever it is that they're doing. So they're both using their unique gifts, talents, and superpowers in service, which makes them feel actualized. So they have a sense of purpose. They use their talents to contribute, and then it lines up with the bigger purpose. And then there's an alignment between one's purpose, and there's a sense of contribution and fulfillment.
Those two practices, I feel really fulfilled just even thinking about the prospect of doing them. And I just want to call out the element on purpose, because I think in my experience talking with people who are in their late 20s, early 30s, who are finally going, hang on, do I actually like what I'm doing with my work? You don't have to have the exact same purpose as your organization, but as long as you can find some alignment with your purpose and the organization's purpose, because you're rarely going to have the exact same purpose as someone or something else or some other organization. So I really like how you called out is the examples of how someone's unique purpose can align with an organization in a particular way. It doesn't need to look exactly like that. So thank you. But thank you so much for your time today. I have had an incredible time learning about spiritual intelligence, and I'm keen to take this back to my workplace. I mean, your work has transcended obviously many countries so far, but it's come to Australia, and now it's going to penetrate Canberra, where I'm based. So you're getting the message out there, and I hope that in the 10 years we'll be talking about spiritual intelligence in the workplace as well as emotional intelligence, or maybe even more so.
Thank you, Liv. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited and delightful to be here with you.
And so if the listeners are keen to learn more about the incredible work that you do, where can they find you?
Well, I have a website, yosiamram.net, just my name. I don't know if they can figure out the spelling,
I'll
yosiamram.net,
pop it in the show notes as well.
or what might be easier to remember is awakeningspiritualintelligence.org. So that's a nonprofit I started, and that's another URL. Might be easier to remember. On YouTube, there's a at Awakening Spiritual Intelligence YouTube channel where there are recordings from free events that I lead once a month on each of the spiritual intelligence qualities. So this last one was done on last Friday on devotional love. The one before that was on openness. We talked about openness today. The one before that was on gratitude, and so on. A few sessions ago was on purpose. So each of the spiritual intelligence qualities, once a month, I dedicate a 2-hour community meeting. And actually, the last couple, there was somebody from Australia. I was impressed that attended them. They were at 11:30 California time, and I forget what time that was in Australia. So, oh, it's actually the same time you and I
Amazing.
started.
Starting their day with it. How great.
That. Yeah, and there was
Well,
someone
you're
from
probably
Romania and so on. So that was wonderful to see. But anyway, so that those recordings are available on the YouTube channel for at Awakening Spiritual Intelligence, one word. So hopefully that's easy to remember. And then if you go to my website, there are links to free assessment of your spiritual intelligence. And so you can get a profile of your strengths. For somebody, purpose might be a strength and gratitude may not be, or someone else, mindfulness is a strength and gratitude is a strength, but purpose is not. So the idea is not to compare yourself to others, but to look at yourself within you. What are your strengths? How can you leverage them more? And how can you use them to work on the things that you want to work on? And that's it provides you a report. There's a free level, and then there's a more advanced level that's more comprehensive and more tools for and tips. So that's also available. There are lots of
amazing.
resources on my website and through this nonprofit, and I'm just delighted and honored to be doing this work. But we're
It's
in this
incredible.
together,
And
you know.
yeah, 100%. And I've subscribed to your YouTube. So I look forward to jumping on your next community session and going back and having a look through them and doing the quiz myself. But yeah, I love your work, and I hope this can support many other people to jump on board with spiritual intelligence and share the incredible impact that developing this can have on not only yourself, but the community and the world. So thank you again so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Liv. Delightful.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope this was helpful. If you thought of someone while listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could share this episode with them. While you're doing that, please also take a moment to leave a review on the podcast if you haven't yet already. It takes less than a minute and it means so much to me and helps this podcast to reach more people just like you. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and achieve every dream you have, because actually, you can.